'Twas the night before drywall, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. Unless that mouse was named Alex, because I have been stirring, and it is the night before drywall. In fact, it's about 3 o'clock in the morning before the drywall guys show up at like 6:30 in the morning. Well, at least the foreman does, and all the guys show up at like 7:30. But we are finally going to be getting some drywall in this house, and I am stoked about it. We have been busting our butts for the past week getting our Sega vapor barrier upstairs installed. Elena's dad came in from out of town. He's been helping us work like madmen for like 3 days straight. My mom came over yesterday, was helping cut tape, and we finally got the upstairs done. We were supposed to start yesterday morning, and thankfully a giant snowstorm came in and canceled the day we thought it was supposed to happen, but we did pull an all-nighter. Today, I'm still up late, getting some odds and ends wrapped up, getting all of our can lights positioned correctly and making sure that everything is ready to go. But I think it is finally ready to pull the trigger. We can start hanging some of these sheets up. I'm sitting on one of 4 stacks here in the garage. It is 244 sheets total. And this was a task that never once in the whole journey of this build did I ever think I would want to do myself. I always wanted to hire out drywall. I knew that I had no business hanging 200 something sheets. It just is not worth any amount of labor, and especially when it comes to the finishing, it's more of an art than it is something that you can just pick up on by reading internet articles and watching YouTube videos. Most of construction you can kind of learn just in time, right when you need the skill. Drywall is not one of those skills, however. Laying block was another one I didn't really want to try. So I'm glad that we are hiring this out. We are contracting with a local company. It's a small business, a husband and wife team, and I think they have 1 full-timer, 1 part-timer. They subcontract out the hanging to a crew of like 8 or 9 guys that are local. They can come in and get all the hanging knocked out, and then it's just up to Dave and his crew of just a couple other guys to finish it. Now, as you can tell, the vapor barrier in our garage is still not done. We have cabinets over there, which is what prevented us from rolling that all the way out. So we've decided to split the job into 2 phases, upstairs and downstairs, so we can get all those cabinets upstairs, get them out of our way, and then finish the whole downstairs in the garage. So this morning we'll just be starting the upstairs. These 2 stacks are the 1/2 inch. These are 150 sheets. Disregard this stack. This is our Latacrete Hydraband board. That's for the shower. As far as mud goes, Dave asked I get all-purpose and the purple lid mid-weight. 15 buckets of that, 10 buckets of that. That should cover all the finishing. And then we have 82 sheets of 5/8 type X. That's going on all the ceilings. And finally, just 12 little sheets of that blue board 1/2 inch. That is going in our upstairs bathroom. Dave asked I get all 4x8 sheets. That's what he prefers. I wanted to get 4x12s because I thought that would eliminate more of the butt joints, but the hangers actually charge more to work with the bigger, heavier sheets, and he's very confident in his butt joint finishing skills. I saw a lot of great reviews for this contractor we're hiring, and I met with them here on site before they put their estimate together, and I think they're going to do a great job. I did get quotes from a few other contractors. They were substantially higher, and it just didn't feel as personal. I really like that this is a small business. I feel like they care more about the final product, and that is someone that I'm happy to support. I did do some shopping around before buying all this drywall and getting it delivered, and I landed on Lowe's actually as the best supplier. They, of course, only have the 4x8 sheets, which was fine because that's what the contractor wanted. But their bulk discounts, along with the credit card savings, was huge. Even compared to Home Depot, they were like markedly less expensive. And it all got delivered for $20. We just forklifted it right in here in the garage. I had a pallet jack and kind of pulled the stacks back from the door so we could get the second stack in. There are drywall specific companies and suppliers that will have a boom truck and boom it all up to the 2nd floor if that's what you need. In our case, yes, we do need plenty on the 2nd floor, but Dave assured me that the hanging crew actually was fine just carrying it up the stairs. I said, okay, that's fine. The boom trucks did come at a pretty hefty upcharge. It was about $1,000 extra. Of course, they figure it into the price of the sheet, so they say delivery's free, but you're paying substantially more per sheet for their service. And so I just didn't really think that was worth it. If the hanging crew is willing to carry it up the stairs, that's fine by me. And it made it for a really easy delivery too, just to be able to fork it right in this garage. Dave was gonna procure the sheets and the mud himself through Lowe's as well. But I decided that I would rather buy them myself so that if there are any full sheets left over extra, I can throw them in the back of my pickup and take them back. These estimates did account for about 10% of extra, so I do expect there's going to be some extra sheets. I tried to get as close as possible using the Chief Architect model. It does have a material estimator in there, and I added about 10% for some of the off-cut factors because we do have a fair amount of sloped ceilings and features that are going to generate a little bit of waste. So I'm going to go take a little cat nap before Dave gets here. We're going to do a walkthrough now that all the vapor barrier's up, the sprinklers are in. There's some non-standard details on this house, and I want to make sure he knows about it so he can communicate that to the hanging crew. First sheet going up. One thing I was extremely clear on to all three guys in this crew was that we were not going to compromise the Siga membrane. This meant no routers for cutting out boxes on any exterior wall or ceiling. Just measure for the opening and pre-cut on the ground, and luckily these guys were good enough carpenters that was no issue for them. A few of the holes were larger than they would have been with a router, but I had the finisher patch those up quickly as he was going through. The guy in the safety shirt is Hector, who is basically the crew leader. His uncle has the red NASCAR shirt, and his younger brother Esteban rounded out the crew. We are off to the races this morning. Dave arrived around 6:30. I went through the whole upstairs with him, talked through all the details about the sprinklers, the vapor barrier, how we are not to puncture it, and a few other things. The guys he works with to do the hanging arrived around 7:30, unpacked their gear, their stilts, their ladders, their tools. There's only 3 of them. It's a family affair. It's actually 4 brothers, their dad, and their uncle that run the hanging crew. So that was kind of interesting to see. However, there's only 3 of them here today. So I really don't think they're going to get done the whole upstairs in one day. I'd be really impressed if they did, but it's certainly a possibility. They're starting with the 5/8 on the ceiling. All of the ceilings in both the upstairs living space and the downstairs are 5/8. The garage to living space separation had to be 5/8 type X for fire resistance. That's building code. I wanted to do 5/8 up in the living quarters, however, just for the extra rigidity. We have a rafter framed roof. It's not quite as flat as a truss roof would be because of the variations in just dimensional lumber and how it moves in the seasons. So I thought the 5/8 would give a little bit of extra rigidity in the ceiling board. It also has to support a little bit of weight. It has to push up some of the rock wool that's sort of pillowing down a little bit. I think 1/2 inch probably would be fine doing that, and we're framed at 16 inch on center, so 1/2 inch would certainly be adequate, but I thought it would be worth it for the small extra expense to do 5/8 on the ceiling upstairs too. One of the most critical things to prep for the drywall crew was sealing off all the HVAC to protect it from a huge amount of dust. For the wall stacks, we taped over the oval pipe with masking tape. For the floors, we had some temp cardboard over it during insulation, but that's not going to stop a foot from going right into that boot. So we replaced it with some scraps of plywood, screwed down, and taped at the edges to keep dust out. We also walked through to make sure we didn't miss any required nail plates and added some in spots that would benefit even if not required. Piping, ductwork, wiring, and electrical boxes. What do you think?
Good.
So far, so good?
Yeah.
Are you glad you're not hanging it?
Oh, yeah.
Here's what I spent most of the time doing. Just standing around with the camera and watching, which was honestly kind of nice for once. I also learned that when Dave said the hanging crew would carry the sheets up, what he actually meant was they charge him by the sheet to do that, so to save money and get his exercise in, he just carried them all up by himself. This is seriously no joke to carry these sheets. A 1/2 inch sheet is 50 pounds and a 5/8 is 70 pounds. In total, he carried 160 sheets up these stairs, with 41 of those being 5/8. He sweat through his sweatshirt and he told me his arms felt like jello by the end of the day. It didn't take long to finish the ceiling in the main living area, and then it was onto the walls.
was glad to see the nailer strips I put in along the tops of the walls during the blocking video getting put to use for fastening the edges of the ceiling board.
Almost lunchtime, and we got wallboard going up. Let's go. We're in the back bedroom. Before we get drywall on back here, the guys are still working out in the main room. We have something a little bit special we're gonna be putting in the wall.
We thought that it would be fun to put a box full of photos in the wall for someone to find in the future. We never plan on selling this house, but we're thinking maybe 100 years down the road, someone may want to transform the space into something that works for them. So we thought it would be fun to have a box in the wall full of photos that document the project throughout the process, and also a little note. And then we also put some notes on each of the photos. So this box was actually made by my grandfather, who recently passed away. He built his own house and helped build his brother's house. So this is a very special box. We also included a couple of photos of him in here as well, as kind of like a thanks and honor to him. Unfortunately, he was never able to actually come on site and see our house build, but he was a very avid follower of our channel and was always telling others about our channel. So we are going to be putting his box in the wall in memory of him. So for the photos, these were just ones that I had on my phone, and I basically put them in here in chronological order. So this is us clearing the access way. This is the start of the foundation, so that's when we broke ground. Framing, septic, the storm that happened in August, and then it basically ends with some of the exterior finishes. And then on the back, I just wrote some notes. This one got a little smeared. I changed my pen halfway through. So some of them are more simple, but I did document everything. And one very special photo is in here.
Hey, who's that? Let's see the note.
Pause to read. We initially thought that we might put this box in the pantry wall because it's a 2x6 wall, so there's a little bit more space, but we thought about it more, and a bathroom is probably the most likely room to be renovated when someone gets sick of the tile that's in there. It may even be us 30 years down the road, we will see, but we thought that it would be good to put it in this shower wall. So there's this blocking here for our niche, so I think we could put it perfectly right here. Are you sure there's nothing on the other side?
So the shower head never leaks.
Let me see. Yeah, that's kind of cool.
The guys are at lunch. Here is day one lunchtime progress. The whole ceiling of the main living space is done, and we have some wallboard up on the main living space as well. Got about half of that wall. They're working from the top down, so they ripped it's a 10-foot ceiling, so they ripped 2-foot sheet, and then they're gonna do 2 4-foot sheets, and there'll be about a 1/2 inch gap at the bottom. It is a lighter crew today with only 3 of the guys. I think they have a few other guys on another job, and one of the guys' uncles was taking his girlfriend on a date, so he is off today. Between that and the fact that I asked them to not use the rotozip on anywhere there was the Siga Myrex or the Reson tape, it's going a little bit slower than it typically does. That is completely okay with me. I'd much rather it go slower and be better than vice versa. And I really appreciate them taking the time to hand cut around all the boxes off the wall. So they're measuring to every box, figuring out where it goes and cutting it. It's a little bit less precise than doing the rotozip method, which we will do that on the interior walls, but it ensures that the Reson and the Siga stay intact. And we put a lot of labor into that, so that was important to us. To drive the screws, they're using these DeWalt drywall screw guns, which only rotate when they're pressed, but the motor runs the whole time. The nice thing about these is it does a really nice job at sinking the screw to the exact depth it needs to be, and no more, no less. The only minor complaint I have, and it's not much of one because I couldn't do any better, is there is a fair amount of misses with some of the joists, but some of the joists are crooked, so it's really tough to see it when you're up in the air. They'll get mudded over and covered and painted, so you won't see them anyway. It's just one extra hole in the vapor barrier, which would have been solved if we would have planned for it at the beginning and furred the whole ceiling down. That way the screws wouldn't come close to it. It would just be an 1.5 inch service cavity up there. But we did not plan for that to start, so it is what it is. Did Dave mention about gluing to the steel on the pocket door? There's really not a whole lot to fasten to on the pocket door.
Okay.
If you're running a sheet this way, after here, there's nothing between there and there to fasten to until you get to that little piece of poplar. Okay. So you might want to throw a little bit of glue on that steel. It's really thick steel.
Also, okay.
I don't think you're gonna get a screw through it.
Okay, yeah, we'll put glue in that.
It's really,
and then we'll screw to that.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
All right, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, he didn't tell me that.
It's actually standard procedure for these guys to glue all the board to ceilings at the very least, and sometimes walls, which in our case we couldn't do except for a few interior walls, so I just said don't worry about it. Some drywall guys seem to swear by the glue, some say it's unnecessary. I could see how it could help in the long term as the structure moves in the seasons, but we'll be in this house for a long time, so ask me in a couple decades if there's any screw pops. At the spots where the guys could use the router, they kept track of where boxes were by making a mark on the sheet above it with a number for how many inches it was down from the edge of that sheet. That was the point they would plunge the router in to find the box, then run it around the outside edge of the box to complete the cutout.
Day one of drywall has concluded.
Woo!
3 guys have done the whole main living space and hallway. Not a bad day's work.
We got to relax for once.
Yeah, we were just the camera operators for the day. They did a nice job hanging. They didn't use any rotozip tools. Anywhere there was Siga, it was all hand cut off the wall before getting installed. That certainly took a little bit longer than what they're used to, using the rotozip for everything. They did use the rotozip for the interior walls that didn't have any Siga. That was no problem, and they definitely were able to fly quite a bit on this pantry and this hallway with no Siga, except on the end there. So what's your first perception? What's your first take on now having wallboard?
So 2 things. It's brighter in here than I thought it would be with only having really 3 windows. So we have the triple window here, we have a double mold unit back on the back side, and then we have the French doors. But it's actually really bright in here. It's about 5 p.m. so the sun is setting and it's on the west side behind the trees, and it still feels fairly light in here. The second thing is that it feels smaller. I don't know why it feels smaller, but I think it's because we're used to looking all the way up into the ceiling. It looks smaller though, even more so than when we had the Siga. So that's really interesting. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I really have no idea why, but I do agree. The space just feels slightly smaller.
It's weird.
I don't know. Like when I look over this direction, it's really not it doesn't feel that much different. But when I look towards the kitchen, I don't know what it is, whether it's the pantry here or something, it just seems a little bit smaller. I don't know.
I think it's the
We're probably
pantry.
just being crazy. It's literally just optical illusion.
I think it's the pantry because the pantry wall has always been open, so we could see into this other wall. Even with the insulation, we did not insulate that wall. So now that that's closed off, it just feels a little bit narrower. But once we get cabinets in, I think it's going to just change the whole space, and it's going to look exactly how we envisioned it.
Right. It was definitely a good idea to put the drywall screw marker where my can light's got to get drilled out. Can you see the marker here? Barely. It's this guy right there. And there's my screw. I had to move this one just a little bit to fall correctly within the can light. But I know that screw is the exact right point to put my laser dot, and that cannot get wiped away with some drywall dust.
I honestly don't, how do we even clean up all this dust? Do we know?
Vacuum.
Do they clean it up?
I mean, they'll probably sweep.
Okay. Well, anyways, we probably should have marked our cabinetry on the floor with paint because we just used a really thin pencil. And now it's really challenging to see where everything goes, which it's not a huge deal because we can just remeasure and place everything where it needs to go. But we had kind of laid out exactly where the countertops were going to be in relation to the cabinets. And now you can't really make that out and see what it is.
I mean, if you look closely enough, you can see the lines. They're not going to get wiped away. It's going to be fine. There's the corner.
But what's this
It'll be
line
all
and what's
good.
that line?
This guy's a floor joist. This is the countertop edge, and this is the cabinet edge.
Testing out washing my dishes while I'm looking out the window.
Dishwashing simulator. Wonderful.
Beautiful view.
It's the morning of day 2. We are underway again. Yesterday, according to my sheet counts, the guys hung 37 sheets of 5/8 and 42 sheets of 1/2 inch. The whole main living space, hallway is done, walls and ceiling. All we have left to do are all of the small rooms, so the bathroom, pantry, 2 bedrooms, closet. Dave and his helper are here today. They're starting the finishing process, so they're pre-filling joints and screw holes, getting ready for that first coat of tape. They're gonna pre-fill, let that pre-fill dry, and then put the tape on. That way, as that pre-fill sets up and contracts a little bit, it doesn't pull a divot in the tape. He said it's a little bit more of a reliable method to not getting any noticeable shrinkage in the tape where you can actually see that little concave area where it shrinks down. So they're just pre-filling right now while the hanging crew is finishing up. We're gonna have drywall here pretty soon. It's pretty awesome. I'm impressed with how little scrap there was from yesterday. That's a lot of sheets for that little bit of scrap and these little panels against the wall. I'm surprised you guys don't use stilts.
I have them, I just don't really use them as much anymore. A lot of times, if I'm working by myself, usually when I have them, I put you just, see, you gotta get to the mud, you gotta stack it up high enough for you to get to it. Then you gotta get back over and mix more mud if you gotta mix more.
That makes sense. Never thought about the refill aspect of it.
I mean, if you have another person with you, definitely it's perfect. You know, they can fill up it or change out the bucket head. You can be on the stills the whole day.
The guys are starting with the green lid USG all-purpose mud for the pre-fill, and they'll do all the tape bedding with that. And then they're gonna switch over to the purple lid USG mid-weight mud. Dave said he prefers how this finishes compared to the all-purpose. It's a little bit softer, smoother, I guess, lighter. It sands easier. So we have 10 buckets of that as well. 25 buckets of green lid, 10 buckets of purple. That should cover both the upstairs and downstairs. It's like 30 something degrees outside, but it is a nice toasty 60 in here, and that is because of our radiant floor. Obviously, we've got all the ducts taped off, so not gonna be using any forced air to heat upstairs, but just the garage being about 60 in here because of that radiant floor. Upstairs is like 55 maybe. The air just all floats up there through the open doorway, through the entry door. So this heating system has been key to making good progress through the winter before we have all of our ductwork hooked up. It's made it way more comfortable in here. And in the case of the drywall, if it's too cold, the mud will take forever to set, and I'm not even sure if it would set up that well at all if it's like freezing temperatures. It's got to be above freezing, I think, at least. But having it almost room temperature up there is awesome because we don't have to wait for spring to do any of this work. So the radiant system has already paid for itself, in my opinion. If you are doing a slab in your garage apartment, or honestly, if you're doing any slab in general, even in your basement or whatever, just put the tubing in now. It's such an inexpensive addition when there's no concrete there yet. You don't even have to hook up the mechanicals yet, or maybe even ever, but it's so nice to have the option to do it in the future so that you can have a heating system with no ductwork whatsoever. It has really benefited us. Let's talk brands of drywall real quick. We got National Gypsum, that's what Lowe's carried, and I believe it's because there's a factory in Baltimore. And from what I've seen, you know, I don't know anything about drywall really, but it looks like any other drywall that I've ever seen. It seems to be hanging just fine, no complaints. USG is the other main brand. We've heard some people have a strong preference for one brand or the other. These guys didn't say either way. I did ask, they said they didn't care. The one thing though that I've noticed between the two is that the National Gypsum drywall have these X grid patterns on it, which gives you perfect indications of where your screws have to be, while USG boards do not have that. It's just one big blank panel. We did hang a USG panel in our utility room when Elaine and I were doing it, so I have a half a sheet here, and I can see how having that grid pattern is really convenient. The guys have been using it to do the screw patterns. On the 5/8 boards, it gets 5 screws across, 1 at either edge and 3 in the middle, and then the 1/2 inch just get 4 screws across, so you skip the middle X, but it definitely leads to a more consistent screw spacing. They're not just guessing at the interval. So that is just one thing to note about the National Gypsum product. One of the things I did before the guys got here was label the door openings on whether or not drywall is installed. Yes board for yes, no board for no. This is the entrance into the closet in the bedroom, so we wanted to wrap that. That's getting a barn door. That's why there's that blocking over there. That barn door will basically just go over that drywalled opening, so we didn't really want to put trim there. So we're gonna wrap it with drywall instead. It'll save me a little bit of work down the road. Underway in the bathroom. Blue board is going up. We're doing the whole room in blue board, everything except the shower area in the back. That's gonna be the Hydroband Latacrete. It's a foam shower system, so no drywall there. I left this note here where we're gonna transition from drywall to shower board. At this point, breaking on this stud. It's important to communicate stuff like this because otherwise it would end up getting drywalled. On the other side, it's actually at a slightly different point based on the stud layout, so I left a note here as well. Hector's cutting around this mud ring right now for the floor thermostat. That conduit and that little notch there goes right up to my floor thermostat box. That way I can run my heated sensor wires later. The benefit of running the halo frames is the guys can route out the can lights as they go. There's still another one yet over there. It needs to happen. But you gotta make sure you got them right to start with. You got that screw locked in, otherwise that ring will slide and that'll turn into an oval instead of circle. In addition to the door opening, the guys are going to be wrapping the inside of these niches with drywall as well. Inside the closet here, these are just going to be for jewelry or shoes or something else. So no trim or anything really. And I can always choose to trim it out later if we want to. I'll just put it right on top of the drywall. But again, this is going to save me a little bit of work down the road in the meantime. All the butt joints done, the guys are running all of the taper joints now, the long edges. Not bad for a few hours of work right there.
For any corners that weren't 90 degrees, such as the sloped ceilings, this is what Dave brought for tape.
There's plastic, literally, and that's how it sits in there.
So it gives you that perfect crease.
You can even use this on corners. Once this is in, you mud, like this all is mud behind it. Once it dries, literally all you have to do is run your and finish this area, and then that'll just.
That's cool.
And that shows.
So in the corners, you use regular tape typically. You're just folding it in half.
Well, you mean like straight corners?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you just fold it.
You're just taping over it.
Like there's actual back side and the front side of the tape.
Oh, yeah, the fuzzy versus the smooth.
So there's actually two sides. So you'll see, you can kind of feel it. There's a ridge there.
Okay.
That's the back of the tape. See how that one goes in?
Interesting.
So that's.
So it's pre-folded to be kind of a certain way.
I've hired, had people come to job sites and I was like, so you used tape before, right? No, yeah. I said, do you know, what side is the right side? And I was like, both sides are right. I'm like, no, okay, no.
I've heard before, isn't there like a fuzzy and a smooth texture or something like
it's
that?
a little different on both sides,
No.
but how you tell is that
Is that ridge?
and then you'll see it's imprinted on the other side.
Because they kind of pre-fold it from the factory to be a certain
It's
way.
made that way, so when you do fold it for corners, literally you can just run your hand and it'll fold that way.
Right.
If you try to fold it the other way, you always have to force it.
Oh, I see what you mean.
But
Oh, good. That's a good little trick for 3 1/4
so
inch.
it's 100 foot, yeah.
Yep, 3.25. Okay, that makes
And then
sense.
they have one that's even like, I think they have a 425.
What's that box cost roughly?
Online, it's easy, $100.
Wow.
That one box.
For 100 foot of it, $1 a foot.
Pretty much. Yeah, and then
Wow.
like the distributor, I got 2 for that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wait.
So-
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a big
Yeah,
difference.
that's huge.
Doing that, so.
And then for the inside corners, you're using regular, but outside you're using corner bead.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
Yeah, I had to get
Gotcha.
that.
Do you use the metal or plastic bead?
You can use both, either one. Just the plastic, you have to mud it instead of tape it. I mean,
Okay.
screw it. I just use the metal most of the time just because
I feel like that's probably
it's
more
stronger.
Yeah, more
so if it gets
durable.
hit, that's only it.
Does it stay straighter too because it's metal or plastic
The
or?
plastic, it's folded, so it stays, and then you mud it. So it's just that's mudded in, and the other one's pretty much screwed and then mudded over.
Gotcha.
So it's just not mudded in.
For screws, we started with the 1.5" on the ceiling just because it's a thicker panel and it needs a little bit of extra holding power. For the walls, we moved to 1.25", a little bit shorter, especially for the 2x4 walls with wire in them. Make sure that it does not penetrate too deeply and potentially hits wire in the middle of that. Day 2, lunchtime update. The hangers are in the home stretch. We're in the back bedroom now. They just did that little niche up there. Got to do the walls yet in this room and the main bedroom, but they have done the closet in the main bedroom. So it should not be a whole lot longer now that the hanger is going to be working. Then from there on, it's finishing only. Bathroom is all got the first coat on it. This is that moisture resistant blue board, and we did have some left over, so we went ahead and used that in the laundry as well, what we had left over. Before hanging started, I made a list of all the various cutouts in all of the different rooms. I'm gonna go through right now before the guys come back from lunch, check and make sure everything's got cut out, that a board didn't get put over anything. I have found one already. There's a can light in this bathroom that we still need to cut out, but that's why we made this list. Another great illustration of why I put those drywall screws where I need to drill my cans out. Where in the world would my mark be? Oh, there it was. Could I even when you brush the dust off, there's no seeing that little plus sign there. Over our attic hatch, I'm gonna be using a concealed mud-in flange door. Here's what that looks like. I got it from bestaccessdoors.com. It was not super cheap. I wanna say this was like $230, something like that. But it is kind of cool. It's basically got a push style latch in there. So there's no hardware on the face of it. And it's got this integrated corner bead that just gets mudded out. So at the end of the day, all you see is that little black thin rectangle, and we'll paint it to match the ceiling. I'm gonna go ahead and install this attic hatch before all of the rest of the corner bead goes on, because this is basically, actually it literally is a piece of corner bead that they put in here. This thing is pretty heavy duty, honestly. It's a heavy door. One of the hinges is actually spring loaded right there, so you can take the whole door off. You can see they literally actually used some corner bead, but they put on before they painted it white. And then it's got these little push latches here, so that's why it doesn't need any external hardware to keep it shut. The mounting holes are those big guys right there. There's one on each corner, and I will be using one of these little 1.5" general construction screws to put that in. I don't want to go all the way through my rough framing because I don't remember if I stapled a wire to that or not. Okay, good news is it fits snugly. Almost holds itself up there. That'll hold that side at least. I want to measure and make sure it's square. Otherwise the reveal is going to be not quite right. I should definitely do a test fit.
Even after measuring and remeasuring like crazy, the critical mistake I made was not having the door installed when I put the screws through the drywall bead. The hinge side of this frame had a slight bow in it, and with only about a 1/16 reveal all the way around, I had the worst trouble getting the hinge pins back into their holes after it was mudded in. I should have installed the door and shimmed all around between it and the frame to keep it exactly in place before putting in all the perimeter screws and through drywall finishing. Unfortunately, I'll have to cut all the mud off the hinge side to fix it, so this was a life lesson learned the hard way.
All right, I got this thing all squared up, got the 4 main screws in it. Now I'm just gonna run some screws up into this bead, screw it through the flange, and put those up into my rough framing. Should be ready for mud.
See, I'll pop that out a little bit.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So you notch that. I mean, that ain't gonna matter because this sticks out farther.
Right.
So when you run your hand on this, you end up, this is like a stick out. So when you run your knife up this, it's against this.
Yep.
So it all fills.
Yep.
You know what I mean? With mud.
Is there any reason you use the center tiny screw hole rather than
Well, it's just
one
a
of the
smaller hole, so it pulls it tighter.
Oh, I see what you mean. So for the patchwork, the 20-minute or the hot, it's hot mud, right? Now, isn't that what you call it? The chemical. What's the benefit of that for patchwork? Is it just, it's harder, it doesn't crack as easily?
It doesn't shrink when it dries.
Oh, it doesn't shrink. Oh, I see what you mean.
So numbers, like literally, if there was like a hole like this right here, and I filled it with that joint compound, came back tomorrow, there'd be cracks and it would sink in. Same hole, if I filled it with that 5-minute, just like I would normal, I could come back 20 minutes or 5 minutes later and
it's still flat.
It'd be hard.
And no divot, no depression.
No, it literally just dries, and then you can literally go over it. And then, like I said, a lot of times patchwork, I'll use that 5-minute. Whatever the patch is, I'll tape with the 5-minute, coat it with the 5-minute over the tape. And then my base coat will be regular joint compound. But just because when you sand it, it's just a lot smoother.
Oh, I see.
And it's a lot easier to feather out than it is that 5-minute.
Right. It's like 5 o'clock on day 2. The hanging crew is burning the midnight oil a little bit. I guess they said they apparently stay until 7 or 8 p.m. normally. Yesterday was a bit of an early day because they got invited to a family's house for dinner or something like that. So they cut early yesterday, but they're staying to finish it tonight. They're in the last room, the main bedroom, and they're probably about halfway done with it. The closet's done, the ceiling's done, and they're just cranking out the rest of the walls. So once they're done with that, we will be able to throw this giant pile of scraps. And actually, it's really not giant at all. It's a lot less scrap than I was imagining there would be. They've been really good at efficiently using the scraps for little rips around the closets and stuff like that. So that's been pretty impressive. There's not a whole lot of waste in general. I ordered 10% extra sheets, accounting for some waste. It probably is going to be closer to like 3 to 5% waste, if that. But any of those whole sheets, I'll just take back. Like I said, I got them all from Lowe's, so it's easy to take them back. I'll just throw them in the back of my truck. At most, there might be 10, 15 sheets extra at the whole end of the job. While the guys are working, I've begun cutting out my can lights using my handy dot laser, just setting it so that little green dot is right on one of my markers. It's not exactly jumping out at you, right here, this guy right here. Put that dot right there, project it straight up, and then I just drill right where the dot laser is. It worked out perfectly. Done 2 so far, only like 28 to go, something like that. And I was able to reach up in there and fish out the wires that I needed. So I like this technique better than the metal frames. I think it's easier and honestly more precise when it comes down to it, because you gotta locate those metal frames perfectly if you wanna use those. Whereas this, all you gotta do is make sure it's laid out well on the floor.
While the guys were getting the last few sheets up, I finished drilling out the rest of our 30+ can lights because this makes a huge mess and I didn't want to make more dust after they swept. I had a cheap 6-inch hole saw I originally bought on Amazon for a set of cornhole boards, but it worked perfectly. Then the guys swept up and tossed the scraps out the back door in a pile. I hate seeing things go to waste, so I posted these for free on Marketplace, and although many Facebook trolls laughed at me, believe it or not, someone did come through and get several of the larger pieces for their project.
It's the morning of day 3 of drywall. The hangers finished up last night around 7 p.m. They did a nice job sweeping up, cleaning up all of the extra scraps. We threw them out the French door, out the back, and a pile of what I pretty much expected. It looked smaller when it was up there, but there was some other scraps in other rooms, I guess. So once it's all together, it's a pretty good sized pile. I hate seeing that kind of material go to waste, but I don't really know what else I could do with it. Dave, the finisher, included in his contract to take all the scraps. He's just going to take them to a dump, I think. For future drywall installation, though, because we still do have to do the garage down here in a few weeks, do you have any good idea what to use scrap drywall for, or how to best put that material to use and not just put it in a landfill? Please put that in a comment if you know of anything, because it can't really be used outdoors in any sort of infrastructure because it's so moisture sensitive. So yeah, it's kind of tough, but I think it's just kind of a fact of building. We've been able to get along this whole project without a dumpster. We've basically just been doing trash bags here and there with the normal trash. We haven't really generated that much extra scrap. With framing, I kept almost all of the offcuts for that. And everything else, there really wasn't that much extra. Like the block foundation, there was like maybe 10 blocks extra. So I hope to keep it that way. I don't think we'll need anything else. One of the biggest things that is generated is cardboard, and we're able to recycle that. So the plan for today is Dave and Josh are going to be pre-filling the joints and the screw holes that the guys just finished hanging last night back in the bedrooms. And on the stuff that they taped yesterday or got the first coat on, they're going to start the second coat on that. So it's moving along pretty quickly. Even with a couple guys finishing, I can see this being done within the week, including dry time, because there is some dry time associated. He said for the most part it dries overnight, and in my case it's even better because of the radiant floor heating. It's like 60 degrees up there, so there's no problem with the cold stopping cure time.
Like a baby box. So
Oh,
I take
okay.
these, because there's usually like a hole because it's square there, so the bead doesn't cover it. So that I do it on all the corners.
So that kind of binds
on this
the
side too. He's already went over that. But
binds the edges together. You'll do the, oh, this is the final coat?
No.
Oh, there's one
No,
more.
My next coat, like the knife, like I use this knife, what I just did. And my next knife's like a 12-inch.
Gotcha. So you go from 8
Or
to
10,
12.
8 to 10,
6,
8 to
6, 8, 12.
It depends. And it just spread. You got to keep spreading it. You know.
Yeah, a little bit wider. Drywall day 3 has come to an end. I didn't do much filming today. The guys just were working, letting them do their thing. But they have gotten the second coat on much of the open great room here. And they've done the tape and the pre-fill on the 2 back bedrooms, which were the last ones to finish up. So that is coats 2 out of 3. The third is the final finish coat right before sanding, and that will pretty much be it. So today's Friday. I think by the end of next week, it should be pretty much ready to go for primer and paint. So I'm gonna work on getting that material and tools on hand, everything I need for priming and painting, and we'll be tackling that. This is the second to last trade I think we're hiring out. Countertops is the only other thing that I can think of that we won't be doing. Not that we could really cut our own stone countertops anyway. We could do like a DIY concrete countertop, but we decided not to get involved with that sort of project right now. Maybe something in a future shop or something like that, but we kind of like the look of granite and quartz, so we're gonna hire that out. But the primer, paint, finish electrical, finish plumbing, tile, all the cabinet installation, baseboard, any other miscellaneous touch-ups, paint, flooring, we'll be handling all of that to save some money and because that's what we like to do. And really getting into these finish stages, it's a lot more exciting to do these jobs HVAC rough-in was definitely quite a grind with, you know, all these ductwork runs. It's not something that we really knew what we were doing, and it was very, very difficult work up in the ceiling. But putting down flooring is kind of fun because, you know, you get to see the pretty finished product right after you put it on. Anyway, the guys are going to resume with the third and final finish coat next week, taking the weekend off. So we'll pick up with drywall then. What do you think?
Looks really good.
A little bit more.
Did we do the second coat in here? It looks like.
Yep, on some areas. Yeah. They started. A little bit more echoey, isn't it?
Yep, but once you get furniture in, it
Right.
won't be echoey.
It was eerily quiet up here with just the rock wool. It was like making your ears ring quiet.
Yeah. Ceilings seem really high, which is exciting.
Could you and I have gotten this far in 3 days?
No. Not even close. We probably would have got like one wall done. No, we probably would have got more than that. We would have hung at least one wall, but.
Oh, well, we would hang the ceilings first, but.
Oh, well, then if you're hanging the ceilings first, we probably wouldn't have gotten very far.
Feels good to hire stuff like this out. We can just sit back and watch it get done. That's not a bad, not a bad job.
And don't just stress about what it looks like.
Right, because we know that
They're going to do better.
Right, we're amateurs and we're not going to be able to do nearly what this is with zero practice.
Yep.
It's a new week. Dave's back at it. He is doing all of the rest of the finishing himself. He told me he likes to bring his helper in to do the taping, the kind of the first initial coat. Then he takes care of all the finishing so he can have complete control over the quality, which I am really happy about because that means he really cares about the quality of the work and wants to make sure that every joint looks amazing. We sort of took the weekend off as well. I say sort of because we were still doing a lot of computer work, but not so much housework this weekend. We stayed up so late for so many nights in a row leading up to this drywall job that we kind of needed to relax and catch up a little bit on our editing and taking footage off of our memory cards. In that big push leading up to drywall, we filmed an absolute ton of content and I had to sort through all those hundreds of clips, hours and hours of footage, get those all situated and ready for editing. So this week, now that Dave's starting back up again, we'll start back on the work down here in the garage, finishing up our vapor barrier and a few other odds and ends for blocking and whatnot to get ready for the next phase of drywall, which is going to be down here in the garage. As you can see, we've only been able to partially finish the ceiling vapor barrier because we have all these cabinets sitting here. So the idea is we'll prime and paint upstairs and then get these cabinets up there and out of the way down here so we can do all the drywall work down here and do not have to be tripping over these things and moving them a million times.
These things, man, hurt your hand open this.
They got a little tool for it. You ever seen those?
I hate that.
And then you like to do all the last coats yourself.
Yeah, like a lot of times I don't even have them putting a second coat on.
There are specialty tools for applying the tape and mud super quickly, but Dave told me from the start he likes using the good old-fashioned knife. I don't know what it is, but I feel like watching drywall finishing is sort of therapeutic. It's just so plain and boring, but precise and skillful at the same time, which makes it oddly satisfying to watch.
You make that look too easy.
A lot of times when I do it, you won't see ridges. Sometimes you do, but. Barely feel like you have it in your pan.
How much difference would you say that pan, like percentage wise, is that maybe way half of what the green lid does?
No, I would probably say maybe it's like I don't know, maybe a quarter difference or something. It's not too much.
Gotcha.
But you feel it because I've been carrying the green, You know what I mean? So once I put the good purple in, it feels later.
Now you're used to the green, and all of a sudden you switch to the mid-weight. This is the third pass on all the screws too? This is
I haven't touched the screws.
Oh, okay.
So that's still the second one screws.
Gotcha.
So they dry faster, so I usually kind of fast. Like people like put too much mud over it, and it just gets blobbered. Like you literally supposed to just put it on, scrape it tight every time.
Right.
And it's just 3 times. And then, like I said, when your knife goes across it, you can feel a lump. If you feel that lump, you're usually gonna bang something in. It's like the number one thing people do is they just put too much mud on there. So you're seeing it screws down for like 10 minutes.
I guess the only real reason you need to do it more is because the first coat shrinks a little bit, right? So it ends up in a dimple.
Every time you go around, you come back the next day, it'll sink in.
Yeah.
But you just keep going over it.
But after you fill it a couple times, then it's flat.
Yeah, like I said, this mud shrinks when it dries, so.
Well, fast forward about a week, we went to Las Vegas last week for the International Builder Show. And while we were gone, Dave finished up all the rest of the sanding and the final touches on the drywall upstairs here. So unfortunately, we didn't get any footage of sanding. We're gonna have to get that when we do the downstairs garage portion in just a few weeks. Overall, I'm really pleased with how it turned out. All of the walls are nice and smooth, and it really looks very flat. It's really difficult to capture on camera, but up close, it looks quite nice, and I think it'll look even better once we get some primer on here. There is quite a bit of dust from the sanding, I guess a combination of dust and the paper picked up. So I'm gonna have to go over this and clean this all before we put the primer on, but that's a project for later. This is pretty obvious, but I'm very happy that we hired this trade out. If Elaine and I would have tried to take this on ourselves, we probably would still be working on it a year from now and it still wouldn't look good. So it was definitely a no-brainer hiring this out. It's just one of those things you cannot pick up sort of overnight just watching some YouTube videos. It's an art, it takes a lot of practice and a lot of time to learn how to do it well. This is one of the last trades we'll be hiring out really. The only thing after this is quartz countertop install. Other than that, we're gonna be doing pretty much everything else ourselves. The next big thing in here is primer and paint, which we're gonna be tackling ourselves. That is a topic for another video though. As always, thanks for watching and we will see you on the next one.